Hi, welcome back. So, this is the second thing that I felt like I should talk about a little bit. Have you ever realized that the thing that once made you special doesn't make you special anymore? This is something that has been hitting me recently, and for years I have lived and worked as a developer and then switched to an automation field. I wasn't a proper coder or a tech head, but when I switched to an automation field, in my job I was able to automate anything. There were like some projects where the managers and people said that it might not be possible, but I still figured out a way to do it. And I always used to see inefficiencies and thought, okay, there's a flow for this and there's a system for it and how we can achieve it. And over the years it became my identity, it became my edge, especially around COVID 2020, where working from office became like a thing of the past, and everybody wanted to like reduce that friction. And with the launch of ChatGPT and AI, everything became like a very generic information, and that's how like now automation is everywhere. You can see AI automation agencies popping up everywhere, and now everyone is an AI automation expert. Even the people who used to laugh at me when I used to talk about like bots and workflows, and I used to say that I can automate everything. So they used to like taunt me that, oh, you see this thing, you can like automate this, you should. So what happens when the world catches up to your skill? What is something that you can do? And I'll give you a little bit of a backstory from my own personal experience. Is I spent almost 4 years working in RPA, which is robotics process automation. And what we used to do there was not just building bots. It was about building habits, to be honest. It was thinking in the trigger points. It was thinking the conditions where your bot could run. I remember one of my managers saying that, there are two phases in every project. The client will try to break your bot and you will try to fix the bot. And I used to get this feeling that I can always find a way. There is always a way where you can automate any of this thing. You give me a messy thing and I try to turn it into a clean flowchart. Give me repetitive tasks and I'll make sure that even like the human involvement should be like minimum to it. First approach is, of course, no humans ever has to touch it, but I also do believe in attended automation. Then I started my own agency, my own studio, and I wanted to bring this vision where I thought, okay, now even the small businesses can use the same automation features. And the vision was to start with the branding and communication and bring a system into the clarity. And this is where the branding also met automation, and we call it a sort of a brand intelligence. I'll talk about it in some other video that I record. So honestly, things didn't go always as planned. 3 years later, I'm still trying to make a structure. I took a very unorthodox way and a method to it, and I started burning through my savings trying to make everything work. And some days it feels like, okay, I'm building a very beautiful model, I'm building a very beautiful workflow, but sometimes the business that actually is there, it didn't live with that. So after 3 years and almost in the last couple of months, there is an inner conflict. There's a part of the story that feels very less glamorous. Being early in something gives you the quite ego high. You start to believe that I see what others don't, I am ahead of the curve, and the belief can be very useful until it becomes a prison for you. Because when the world catches up, you don't just feel like a market competition, you feel like you have been personally attacked. You see a 20-year-old YouTuber teaching the tools and the technologies that you used to learn on, the things that you actually get an expertise on. Is there are like tools now which are available. This is like exactly the same thing that happened with the release of ChatGPT, especially with ChatGPT. And instead of feeling proud, you start feeling replaced. I started feeling that, okay, there is so easy tools now where people can start automating and everybody is like getting into it. And I had days where I scroll and think I was doing this before even that there is an API for that, or there is a way for that, there is a process for that. And That is not a very generous thought, honestly, and that's not a very heavy thought, but I think it's very honest. And if you have built your identity that you have been early, and commoditization doesn't hit your income, it hits your sense of self. And that's where I found myself in recent days. And now I started asking questions that, what should I sell now? What am I? Who am I if this is no longer my area? Then one day, this quote I heard on some YouTubers, I think I'll mention it somewhere. He said that when your specialized knowledge becomes generic. And I thought about it for some time, and at first it sounded like kind of a depressing for me. It's like, everything that I've learned has expired. But later on I realized that it doesn't mean that you have to quit. It means that you have to evolve from that, move on to one layer higher. And it wasn't just mean like to automate tasks. I think it meant for me to like design systems to orchestrate how humans and machine should work together. And it's a very different game. In fact, I used to have this thing where a line where I used to call it turning machines into men. And this is like very true, because when I started with web development, I learned very basics of technology. A lot of my friends helped me through that time period. And later on, like CMS tools like WordPress and other tools came up, and everybody started asking that, can you make this thing for this much amount? And earlier I used to resent it, but later on I started learning WordPress, started making websites in that. This is how like it made me survive for some time. And then I switched to automation because I saw a gap there as well. So what I wanna say is that, so instead of asking how do I protect my old self, I started asking what is the deeper skill under all of this that I have acquired in last few years. What have I actually been practicing this whole time, with or without tools? And the answer that personally for me kept coming up was systems thinking. It's not just automating steps, but understanding how information can move, how people behave, how decisions get made, and then design around it. And I think I like, with my own experience, being somebody who used to work as a developer, then got into automation and was heavily, and I'm still heavily interested in knowledge base. There is a book called Building a Second Brain, and I started feeling that everybody is a knowledge worker. I have a very keen interest in psychology, from where I try to understand what is the people behavior and design things. I mean, working with my friend on branding and automation agency, it sort of helped. And there was this another thing. There's an analogy behind one of the things, which is related to story about the cars. So in London, when the cars were invented, people used to think that, okay, these are faster than horses. You can actually travel fast. But the real problem behind it was there was a very poop situation that was there. Like the streets of London were like filled with horse poop, literally, and the disease were rising and the mess was there. And when the cars came, it cleaned the streets. Like speed was a side effect of introducing cars. And now with AI, we are facing a very similar place. AI is cleaning up the human inefficiencies, but it is also creating a new kind of waste, which is a data pollution. Too much noise, too much content, too many shallow automations, somewhat related to the dead internet theory. And the next revolution, I think, won't be around automation anymore, but it will be who keeps a clean system. And it's not just data pollutions, it's emotional pollution too. Every notification you don't need, every metric that doesn't matter for you, every automation that triggers anxiety instead of clarity. We want to build automations that move information, that is like designed for you to move with trust. So when a founder wakes up, he just opens their dashboard instead of feeling calm and informed. We don't want them to feel like overwhelmed and like behind. It's not a problem that can be just solved with tools or a particular skill. It is something that is somewhat related to how you design the reality of a problem. And this is where I personally see my next job, not as a guy who builds more and more workflows, but as a person who asks which flows should exist at all, which data do we actually need, and what do we need less automated and with more human presence. In other words, it's not just the mechanic, but I want to be a lot more like a city planner. And that's when it clicked. My real skill wasn't automation, it was thinking in systems. It was being a system designer, seeing the patterns underneath everything in business and behavior, in emotions. So the next level for me was a lot more about orchestration, not just connecting tools, but connecting ideas, data, people into something which is coherent. And that's what I'm exploring now. I'm, of course, learning about agentic AI, data hygiene, learning a little bit more about databases, which is still very difficult for me to learn about. And responsible automations, human induced automations, probably. And also try to introduce my own creativity into it and have a kind of a brand intelligence where the creativity meets a control. And this is where I think future is. So, and that is something that you can't templatize. You can copy a flow, but you can't easily copy a way of somebody's thinking or somebody's seeing. And that can be one of my superpowers. And to make this easier to work with, I started seeing my whole journey in 3 layers. Think of them as the altitudes that you think of, which is operator, architect, and steward. At operator level, you want to do the thing. You want to build the flows, you want to design the brand, you want to write the code, you want to like craft everything with your own hands. Then you have the architect level where you want to design how everything fits together. You want to decide where the information should flow, how your team should, how the decision should be made. And then at the steward level, you want to hold the why. You decide what should exist at all, what's aligned with the kind of word or industry you actually want to build. And when my specialization becomes generic, I realized I was clinging to the operator floor a lot when life was inviting me to an upper stair. I could either compete with everyone at the same layer, or I can move to a different altitude where very few people were even thinking yet. So now I look at my own work, I ask, is this something an operator should handle? Or is this something that an architect should work on? Or is it a steward work? And I try to spend more of my time higher up, not because I'm above the work, but because this is where my experience can actually be useful. And we can give space to the newcomers in the industry who are learning the tools, who are just learning the skills. And now looking back, my agency, I don't think so it really failed. It has completed an iteration that it is supposed to do. And it showed me what doesn't work and what kind of problem actually matters. I'm also realizing that failure is just a data. I talk about that as well. But of course, inversion thinking, if you think what fails and you want to learn from your failures, then data tells you that the data tells you what needs debugging in your life. And if you think about it, that's an automation too. You tweak the process, test it again, optimize, you run it in multiple cycles, you think what's gonna break it. So like the earlier version of me thought the goal was find the thing that you're great at and defend it forever. But now what I think more like is keep evolving into an altitude where your way of seeing does the most good. How you see the world, try to work in that process. So if you're still watching this till this part and some part of you feels and called out, let me give a simple little audit that I'm also using. It's a 3-question audit that you can follow. So the first question is, what exactly did I used to do that felt rare and is now basically a baseline? Be honest, name it. Don't say that I am very generic, or don't say that I am an XYZ. Say that this is the layer of my skill that is now generic, or in the age of AI can be automated, or this is something that now every new guy on the block can pick up and like replace me a little bit faster. Then the second question out of that is, beneath that, what deeper ability have I been practicing all along? What is the one thing that has like helped me build something of my own? For example, for me, it's like system thinking, it's pattern recognition, it's holding space for chaos and trying to transit between the human touch and how you can use a technology. And that's, I think, is your real superpower, the one tool that cannot be easily copied. And also, like a lot of researchers say this thing that a tactical knowledge that a human has cannot be replaced with AI till the point we are recording this video. And the third question is, given the deeper ability, am I meant to keep operating as an operator, or is it a time to switch to an architect or a steward? And don't answer this from a fear, or answer this that like you absolutely have to, but answer it from the truth. Because sometimes even if you stay at an operator level but you are still building that tactical skill, I think staying as an operator is a great choice. Even for now, if I have to test a new tools and like also see how I can introduce automation into my workflow, and if I'm not using, for example, I might not be able to develop a skill to actually work with these tools. So if you sit with just these three questions and a notebook, you'll probably find that the story you have been telling about losing your edge is actually a story about you outgrowing your. So if you are in that phase where your skill suddenly feels outdated, don't panic. The world catching up means your instincts were right. Just move a layer higher. Or the one who stewards the principle instead of chasing every new tool. Because when your superpower becomes common, and that's not the universe canceling you, that's the universe telling you that it's time to. So keep evolving your attitude and keep moving on. And if this is something that you like, you resonate with, I've started recording content rather than waiting on it. In my previous video, I've talked about how I always used to overthink about what I'm gonna say and what I'm talking about. Please do like, share and subscribe. Tell me if you really like this format, or if there is anything I can do better. I want to talk about founders' behavior, I want to talk about system thinking, I want to talk about technology, innovation, creativity, I want to talk about spirituality in between. I want to mix all these models together. Like, I don't want to be a one-sided person. But let's see where the algorithm takes us. What kind of audience do I start resonating with? And thank you for watching. I'll be back.
Just cold emails and an ocean dock where I cast these spells. Boys chat hype, I chat system, speaking code, design with wisdom. AI bot with an astral vision, BPM jump but the soul stay rhythm.